Hello and welcome to A Russell Reads. This time we have Outbreak by Joshua C. Chad. Now, Outbreak is one of the books that is featured in the Rafflecopter that is ending super soon. So if you haven't gone to meganorussell.com/Rafflecopter, make sure you do that soon. The link will be along with this video, and you can be entered to win a Kindle Fire 7 preloaded with awesome books, including Outbreak. All right, and here is our blurb. Two brothers learn of the apocalypse after being out of touch for a few days. Returning to town, they learn firsthand the dead are coming back to life with a taste for flesh. With their parents in Nebraska, they must embark on a journey to rescue them as they set into motion their zombie apocalypse plan. But they'll see not all is fun and games as they realize it is nothing like they imagined it would be. Can they make it in time to save their parents from a fate worse than death? Emmett Wolf has been preparing for this day for years, but still cannot believe it is happening. An infection unlike any other has begun to spread across America, and the world as he knows it is coming to an end. He must rescue his daughter and ex-wife and transport them to a safe location. But at the end of the world, nowhere is safe anymore. And here is our excerpt from Chapter 1. On Monday, they closed camp and loaded everything into James's truck. They bumped along the rugged dirt road and finally made their way onto the paved road that led into town. But when they pulled into town around 8 a.m., they hadn't passed a single vehicle. "This is weird," James mumbled as he drove toward Main Street, heading for the grocery store. Turning a corner, they gasped. The street was littered with abandoned cars. Some had crashed into buildings, and others looked like they had been left in a hurry. But it wasn't the worst of it. There were bodies, dead bodies, lying all over the street and slouched in the vehicles. "What the?" James says as he took in the scene. "What happened here?" Connor asked. The first body they reached was lying face down in the middle of the street. They got out of the truck, grabbing their holstered handguns and slipping them onto their belts. Slowly, they approached the body. "Hey, are you okay?" James asked. He was bending down to examine the body when the smell hit him. It was the stench of meat rotting in the hot sun. He'd smelled it before, but only with animals, never humans. Connor's training began to kick in. As a Marine, he'd been trained to survive, and even though his military career had been cut short and he'd never seen combat, his instincts were still strong. He was treating this like a war zone, except something wasn't right. If this was attacked by another country, where were all the soldiers? Or did this have something to do with all the blackouts? He couldn't put a finger on it, but there was something terribly wrong with this situation. James rolled over the body while Connor stayed 2 steps behind, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. "Holy," James said, covering his mouth with his hand. The corpse was bloated, with a gaping wound in his neck and a hole in his head. "He has been here at least a day. And bro, he's been shot in the head." "We need to get back to the truck and get out of here," Connor said, with an edge in his voice. Something was definitely not right. "I agree," James said, standing to follow his brother back toward the truck. Something groaned behind them. Connor began to turn around while drawing his gun, and James followed suit. There was nothing there, only the bodies scattered across the street. "What was that?" James asked. "I don't know, but there," Connor said, pointing toward a movement 10 yards away. It was one of the bodies, and judging by the long black hair and delicate physique, it looked to be a woman. "Someone's alive," James cried out, running toward the woman and holstering his gun. Connor followed. The woman rolled over and began to rise on unsteady legs. "Don't move, we're coming to you," James shouted as he closed in. He was only 3 steps away when he came to a sudden halt, his eyes growing wide. The woman was standing, but shouldn't have been. Her right leg was twisted at an impossible angle, and the bone was poking through half-torn skin. Half of her face was so mangled he could hardly tell she was human, and the one eye James could see was pale and lifeless. She started slowly limping towards him, dragging her broken leg and groaning, reaching for him. Then the smell hit him. Rotting meat. She smelled dead. "What the hell?" James said, drawing his handgun and taking a few quick steps back to join his brother. "She isn't what I think she is." "Is she?" Connor asked. Her groans intensified as she began picking up speed. "She can't be." "Can she?" James asked. "Stop or we'll shoot," Connor yelled, then turned to his brother and asked, "What do we do?" "Let's drop back and figure it out. She's not coming too fast." They backed up while keeping their guns trained on her. Clearly, she couldn't be dead. They could see that. Somehow, she wasn't. But she wasn't alive either. She's a zombie, James said. I mean, look at her wounds. She should be dead right now. Then I guess it's time to shoot her. I mean, it. Shoot it, Connor said. He'd come to terms with what it was, and he was ready to deal with it. Moving his sights from her chest to her uninjured leg, he fired. Her knee shattered and she crumpled to the ground, but she kept coming, dragging her body and useless legs behind her. This is unreal, James said. Connor aimed his gun at her chest and squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew out of the gun, blowing a hole through her heart. Her body shuddered with the impact, but she kept coming. Finally, he aimed at her head, ready to end this. His left index finger squeezed the trigger, and her head jerked back. She fell onto her face, unmoving, blood slowly pooling on the blacktop. He lowered his guns, feeling a mix of emotion, but he pushed all those away. He would deal with them later. Right now, they needed to survive. James shook his head. She was a zombie. This is crazy. It's actually happening, the zombie apocalypse. You'd better get used to it, because we're going to be facing a lot more. And I don't want you to freeze, but I think you have my back, Connor said a little harshly. His words woke James up. Don't worry. I would never hesitate to pull the trigger. You know that. I have your back, bro, against person or a zombie. He put his hand on his brother's shoulder. You did what you had to do. Now let's get out of here. Connor sighed. His older brother knew him so well, and with those few words he had eased most of his doubts. They quickly walked back up to the truck, keeping their guns at the ready. Jumping in, James made a sharp U-turn, leaving the carnage behind. James reached into the back seat and pulled his AR out of the case and loaded a 30-round magazine. He chambered around and smiled at his brother. At least we have a plan for this, right, bro? James couldn't help but smile in return. Yeah, we do. It was true. They had created a far-fetched plan for this, though neither thought they would actually use it one day. It had just been a joke, but now it was real, and they would put their plan in action. It was a simple plan, really. They would gather their remaining family, maybe a couple of close friends, and head to their remote lodge in Alaska. There they had everything they needed to be self-sufficient, with occasional supply trips into town using the bush plane Connor flew. The remoteness of the location would keep them safe from most of the zombies, and they would be able to live a somewhat normal life again, assuming everything went according to plan, though it rarely did. Once on I-94, they knew for sure this was real. Abandoned cars were scattered on both sides of the interstate, accompanied by a few bodies and, once in a while, a walking corpse. As such, the drive home took a lot longer than usual. Each absorbed in their own thoughts, they drove in silence all the way to the dirt road that led to their house. And that has been your excerpt from Outbreak. Now don't forget to enter the Rafflecopter, and I will see you next time.